Dr. Hlophe will not be participating in the upcoming proceedings in the JSC, the upcoming interviews that will be happening in October. So the DA has been adamant, about him not being appointed as part of the JSC, right? So I guess they're probably got what they wanted, all right? So they're saying that they need to actually review the whole application, and that will be next year? Let's talk about it. Hello, welcome to Entertainment's Galore, and this is your girl, Missy. Please do like this video and subscribe to the channel if it is your first time here, and if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for tuning in.
In a nutshell, what does today's ruling actually entail and translate to? Can Dr. Hlophe never ever serve in the JSC or related portfolios when designated by Parliament?
Well, in a nutshell, today's ruling simply means that Dr. Hlophe will not attend the JSC proceedings in October, in the next 2 weeks, and in April of next year. So when it does interviews for judges in October and April, he will not participate because the interdict says that even though he's still a member of the JSC for now, he was legally designated by the National Assembly. But because there's a challenge to that decision of whether he was designated, then he cannot sit in the JSC and he cannot participate in the JSC's proceedings. So that is effectively what it means. And the reason why it is an interim interdict is simply, it sort of pauses to say he can't sit for now while the full debate, the full discussion on whether or not he can actually qualify as a member will be heard at a later stage before the either Western Cape High Court or the Constitutional Court.
So, Mbagazela, are you saying this is an interim interdict? Then does that mean he can appeal this ruling though? And what are then the chances of him succeeding elsewhere? Because in attempting to comprehend this matter, the crux of the argument was that he is an impeached judge. The Constitution doesn't make pronouncements or provisions in this regard except a former president. In fact, this was a first of its kind matter that even some of the presiding judges had actually pointed to. So how is this determination then made?
The High Court did point out that this is an unprecedented situation. We've never before had in South Africa a situation like this where a former impeached judge is now a member of the Judicial Service Commission. But it left all of those big questions to the full review court when the full case is heard. For now, what the judgment looks at, what the court looked at, was whether or not if Dr. Hlophe sits on the JSC, it will taint the interviews that will happen in October. Whether those interviews, the credibility will be so undermined that they might as well not have happened. So the court said that is a harm that will be irreversible if later it is found that Judge Hlophe or Dr. Hlophe is not eligible to be a member. So what the court said is that for now, because this question of Hlophe's suitability to sit on the JSC is still going to be dealt with, for now he should basically sit out the JSC interviews, because if he does participate, then all of those interviews will not be credible or will be undermined. And so the court said that there is a harm that is too great. So for now, he should simply be interdicted or stopped from participating, and later he can win the case and continue to be a member, or the court may decide that he is not qualified or suitable at all to be a member. And then your second question was whether or not this can be appealable. Ordinarily, interim orders are not appealable. So that means that he cannot take this on appeal unless he shows that a gross injustice will happen if he does not participate in the JSC. And on my assessment, I don't think that he has enough evidence or enough backing to show that there will be a gross injustice if he doesn't participate. In fact, the judgment itself is that at worst, he will only miss 2 meetings of the JSC. And that is not a harm that can be, that is so great that the interim interdict will be appealable. So at this stage, the interim interdict will likely stand and it will not be appealable. But even if Dr. Hlophe does try to appeal it, the DA can apply to execute the order immediately. So that means the order will be put immediately into effect and while the appeal proceedings go ahead. But for April and for October this year and April next year, Dr. Hlophe will certainly not be able to sit as a member of the JSC.
You know, Mbegazeli, you spoke earlier on about a separate process, right? That will be some sort of fact-finding mission or investigation or inquiry looking into the suitability of course, Dr. Hlophe being able to actually charge out his duties in the JSC. So do you know if this will actually be a parliamentary process or a legal process as, of course, a result of this interim interdict now?
So it will be a legal process. It will be a court process because the DA's court case was separated into two parts. The court right now only dealt with part A of that application, which is really about the question of whether an interim interdict should be granted. So that is the decision that was made today. Part B will still be dealt with by the Western Cape High Court at a later date, because even the order that was granted today, it says Dr. Hlophe cannot sit on the JSC pending a full review application that will be heard sometime next year. So that is still a process that will go to court. And even so, there is another application by AfriForum, which is now at the Constitutional Court. And so the possibility that the Constitutional Court application might be heard first, and that court will give full clarity on whether Dr. Hlophe is suitable or not to be a member of the JSC. So in all instances, it will be a court process, and the outcome will ultimately be determined by the court process. And what the outcome that we expect is either the court will say Dr. Hlophe is suitable to be a member of the JSC, and so the National Assembly's decision was correct, or they might say that the National Assembly's decision was wrong because Dr. Hlophe was not suitable to be a member of the JSC because he was impeached and found guilty of gross judicial misconduct. So those are the two options for now, but they will come in later court proceedings.
In understanding the separation of powers between the National Assembly versus judiciary, how do you then explain how we got to this point?
So there are very limited grounds in which the courts can interfere in the duties of parliament or even the government. So the separation of principles says that the court must stay in its lane and can only go in the lane of the other arms of state in very limited circumstances. And those circumstances is if the other arms of state have acted irrationally. And that is the argument that the DA has made, is that Parliament designated someone who was impeached and removed from office. They have acted irrationally. So that is the argument that will be tested later in the full review application. But for now, the court didn't deal with the irrationality question. They simply said, for now, the DA has a plausible case, right? That case will be later answered in the full court proceedings. But for now, we are satisfied that the case is plausible. And so in the meantime, Judge Dr. Hlophe must sit it out until that full case on the question of irrationality is determined.